Hey guys, we are going to be tying a fly today called the Chief. Now, a lot of you have seen the other instructions that I have for tying a fly called the Brave, but I've had some requests on tying a kind of beefed up or bulkier version of that, and it's called the Chief, just because it's bigger than the Brave. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to be using white thread on this, and this is just a straight shanked hook. I'll be honest with you, I actually bought this hook from a gas station that was having a clearance sale on hooks, and they are sharp as heck. So there's really no like has to be name brand of this or that or anything. So it's just a straight shank hook. Some people might want to use intruder hooks on this, and that would be totally fine as well. But like I said, just needs to be, it can be a straight shank hook, it can be, I don't know, I mean, it could be an intruder style hook, kind of something like a stinger hook or something like that. So I just prefer the straight shank to give it a little bit longer body and a little bit longer profile. Now, you can also see, we're starting off with a little bit of marabou, and what I find is this just seems to help with the fouling effect that tying in this zonker strip sometime has. So what we're going to do there is we're just going to split some of the hairs on the zonker strip. We're going to kind of match that up a little bit with right on top of the marabou. Now, like I said, the marabou, it's going to detract a little bit from the action of the zonker strip trailing in the water, but it also helps with the fouling of the zonker strip around the shank of the hook. So, and it just kind of blends the lighter belly of the fly into the darker back of the fly. Also, kind of a neat little trick here is I use women's hair clips to clip it to my vise and just kind of keep it out of the way. Now that's a black barred olive variant rabbit strip from Hairline, and I just really like that variant that it gives to the fly. It kind of gives us some striping, and I really like that. When you see the back of the fly, it just looks really good, really fishy. You don't have to use that. I mean, you can use any color combinations that you want on this fly. I mainly stick to more natural colors, such as olives and whites, because if you look at any bait fish, at least the ones that we have here in Missouri, are going to be darker on the back and lighter on the belly. So with that in mind, I usually tie in more natural colors. I mean, you could use, you could make this more shad-like. You can make this bluegill-like. I mean, you can put this in any color combination that you want. But I mainly throw this for bass and white bass and hybrids and things like that. So you can see that I've tied in some white rabbit. This will end up being the belly. And we'll pull that zonker strip over the top of it here in just a moment. Pulling those fibers back as I go. And give yourself a little bit of room for the head on this thing, because if you get up close to the eye and you bunch it up too much, when we attach the wire to make this articulated, that a big bulky head could really cause some problems later on down the road. So, like I said, we would rather give ourselves too much room here rather than not enough. That's a big key here. So you want to lash that down real tight. You don't want your back hook coming undone, because if it comes undone, then, well, it's gonna make problems for the rest of your fly. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fluff out some of the fibers, and we're going to just kind of part them like you would, like the part, well, like if you're combing your hair or something like that. So again, we're going to kind of match the two up. We're going to expose some of the leather that's underneath the fibers. We'll tie that off. Again, leaving ourselves plenty of room on the head. The head does not have to be pretty at all, because it's going to mainly get covered up anyway by the part of the part of the articulated fly that is going to kind of blend the two together. So again, doesn't have to be anything pretty. The other thing is, you know, we're not tying for trout here. We're tying for white bass. We're tying for wipers. We're tying for largemouth. By no means are we tying for trout, at least with these hooks and the setup that we have right here. So by no means does it have to be perfect and flawless. You know, if you see a little thread here and there, I don't think it's any big deal, just because, you know, we're not tying for something that's going to look it over and inspect it, you know, like a rainbow or a brown will. So that's going to be your rear fly. We're going to take that out and we're going to set it off to the side. Next, I like to use a Tiemco 8089 hook for the front. Really just something with a wide gap. This is a Gamakatsu. This is a size 2. I'm not sure of the model number, but it really matches up with the Tiemco 8089. This time I'm going to use black thread. And you just want something that's going to give you a wide gap. You could tie this on a bigger hook. You could tie this on really, really small hooks if you did want to try and tie an articulated fly for trout or something along those lines. But yeah, I'm tying this version for bass. So you can see we got a cone head on there. Got a nice little thread layer. The way I like to do my articulated flies is I like to tie in my wire so that it rides kind of on the lower front half of the fly, and you'll see that it does take some work to kind of force it to go where you want to, because it wants to keep peeling up. And I try to kind of butt it up against that cone, and you can see it wants to go places I don't want it to go, but I control it. It's not the one in control here. So it takes a little bit of work, but when you finally get it, it will fish correctly, it'll be strong, it'll be secure, and you'll notice that I'm not going to be applying any Zap-A-Gap or adhesives or anything like that to this fly. I'm just going to rely on the thread and basically good tying, good solid tying. All right, the next thing that we're going to use, this is actually a bead that you can use in a Carolina rig, like if you're fishing for bass using spinning tackle or a bait caster. And I'm going to thread the bead. You know, you can make this anything. If you wanted to find something that's weighted, and they actually make beads for articulated flies. But I mean, you know, you can go to Michael's and you can buy beads, or you can buy the ones from Hairline that are lead, or you can probably even find tungsten if you wanted it. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. The bead is only there to keep the back fly or the back hook from fouling around the front. It's just basically acting as a spacer. Now, like I said, if you wanted something that is going to make it sink or float, you know, you can use the according materials. I like to have a little bit of loop back there, just so that back hook does have a little bit of free range action to it. And you'll see that my wire, is a little long, so I'm going to trim that off. Sorry, wildly unprofessional there. Not that I'm a professional by any means. So I'm going to trim that off, and I'm going to have it to where it butts up in the same place, close to the cone, but not too close. And I'm going to make sure, let me get this all straightened out. If you screw this up, it kind of screws the whole fly up, so you got to be real careful with this part. So now I'm going to tie this directly above the first piece of wire that I tied in. So now you can see I'm just lashing it down, lots of wraps. And I can attest that this is a fine method for attaching the wire, because I've landed many bass and some wipers that have gone over 4 or 5 pounds that they've only landed or only got hooked on the back hook, and it's not come undone. So I wouldn't be passing this along to you if I didn't have full faith in it. So we can see him just really wrapping the heck out of it. I don't like to use adhesives when I don't have to. I will, but I prefer to not. I'd like to, you know, kind of, you know, keep it simple, really. All right, so now you can see that that back hook has plenty of room to move and sway and wiggle and jiggle and things like that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this women's hair clip again to keep that hook where I want it. All right, next, this is ugly. This needs to get covered up. So with that in mind, we are going to tie in some marabou. I like to use a full plume of marabou because it's going to give it lots of action. There's going to be plenty of material there to cover up that wire connection. And I know I'm over tying on this, but I want this to be strong because it's going to get hit and it's going to get smashed a lot. Okay, so it's going to be plenty of material to cover up that quote-unquote ugly connection. So another important part, my back hook came undone. Another important part is as you wrap, to kind of pull those fibers backwards so that you're not basically wrapping it in on itself. Because it will want to. All those fibers, they're so long that they are going to want to cover themselves up. And if you're covering them up, then really what's the point of doing it in the first place? So we're really just kind of fluffing it out and just trying to keep it out of its own way. You can see that we're into a pretty thick part of the vein here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be beautiful. It's a bass, for Pete's sake. We're not trying to win a beauty contest here. So, the one thing I would recommend here is that we want to get all those fibers going backwards so we do cover up that connection. So I'm going to kind of wrap this back and really secure that marabou down nice and tight. I don't want this coming undone because I want that connection covered and hidden. You know, if the bead does show through, that's okay. It's probably going to look like something's bleeding anyway. Now, the next part. We're going to try and cut this or attach this zonker in a way that it kind of blends in with the back fly. So this is a little bit of guesstimation here. You'd want to leave too much of a strip here rather than not enough. If you have too much, you can cut it off. If you have too little, you can't put more on. And yeah, I just said moron. Okay, not that you're a moron. Great for watching the video. Likes are always appreciated. All right, here we go. So we're going to tie this up. So again, that is going to kind of push some of the marabou down to cover up the connection a little bit better. And tying in a tail like this is going to give it a little bit of room to play and move and wiggle, and it's just more movement. Again, I'm going to take one of these clips, and I'm going to keep that zonker strip out of the way. We're going to advance the thread forward, and we're going to tie in some more white rabbit strips. Now, these white rabbit strips, I actually got these from Bass Pro, and really look these over, guys. I've bought some white rabbit strips that are just garbage. I bought these in bulk in one of those big packages that you can get that has, I don't know, a whole rabbit or half a rabbit, and this is really, really good stuff. The leather's nice and thick, the hair is nice and thick as well. It's not that sparse junk, and you regret buying it. So look it over before you purchase it. All right, so now that we got that white tied in, I'm getting close to the end here. I'm going to advance our thread up. I'm going to start wrapping it off the cone. We'll make a dam later. So here we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this white rabbit. We're going to kind of pull it back a little bit and get a good angle on our forward wraps. Again, you can see a little thread there. Trust me, you won't notice it later. We're going to have so much material on this fly, it's going to cover up any of our wrappings. So here we go. Wrapping that. Wrap it forward, pulling the fibers backwards. Again, you don't want to get too close to the cone, but you are going to use this rabbit to keep that cone from sliding backwards. If it slides backwards and it gets loose, it could destroy everything from there back. So it's really important that A, you don't let that cone move. B, you create a good base here because you're going to see we're going to be adding some more material here in just a moment. But you don't want that cone moving. You're going to be putting a lot of thread up here. And I know it's still moving now, but we're going to attach some more material and we will solve that problem eventually. Just not quite yet. Okay, so now we're going to take, just like the first fly, we're going to fluff up our rabbit. We're going to part it. We're going to pull that zonker strip right over the top. Like I said, trust me, when all that white flows back, it is going to cover up any of that thread that you'll see. If you really just look at the fly, you'll see it. But by the time we're done, fish won't. So here we go. We're going to tie this off. Give a few wraps. Cut it pretty close to the base. Now again, we're going to use this leather to tie off and basically make a buffer that will not allow that cone to move around a lot. So we're going to tie it down right like that. Now we should be getting to the point where the cone isn't moving hardly at all. You can just kind of feel it still kind of spins a little bit. I'm going to wrap it till it doesn't. Again, it might take a lot of thread, but trust me, it's worth it. Okay. So now we're going to come back here. We're going to add 2 last pieces to this fly. Again, any color combination will work. Anything that you can think of is just fine. What I like to do here is I like to kind of make a gill type, a gill and gill cover look. So we're going to expose the vein of this piece of schlappen, and we're going to tie it in nice and tight. Again, can't overwrap here because we don't want that cone moving. I'll tie this in nice and tight. Now we're going to flare the fibers out. You can see this is really webby stuff. We're just going to advance it forward. Again, this is going to kind of look like gills. It could look like blood. It could look like a number of things. But it's going to create movement. It's going to create action. And I really think it's going to end up being a color that is really going to get some attention. You know, you've got this real natural color. You've got red, you've got green or an olive or more olive and white and stuff like that. But now this red just kind of pops. It stands out. It's not something that you're going to see a lot. And then we're going to pull those back. Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. Okay, well, all right, let's get into some damage control here. I think it's going to work just fine. Pulled too hard. Okay, that's okay. That actually worked out just fine. We're going to, we were wanting to pull that back anyway and kind of angle that backwards. It kind of looks spinner bait-like. So now that worked out fine. We're going to flare that out. Next thing we're going to tie in, and the last thing we're going to tie in, is going to be some black schlappen. So it's going to kind of mute this just a little bit. You could tie this hackle in so that it's really sparse or really, really thick and webby. I mean, it's really up to you. What do you want it to look like? You know, you could do 1 color. You could do 3 colors. You could do, you know, nothing at all. I mean, you just, you know, leave a collar off of it. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is the way I like it and the way I've tied it and what's been successful for me, so I can only tell you what I've done. So again, flare those out. Pull them backwards. Again, we're going to get plenty of wraps in here, and we're going to end up at the cone head. And again, we're trying to keep that cone from sliding around and moving so that it doesn't allow the rest of the materials in the back to move around. I don't really want to go any further than that because I'm going to run out of good material to tie off. I want to get into that thin, weak stuff, so we'll do that. Pull them backwards a little bit. Again, more wraps. That looks good. Cone is not moving at all. We're in good shape. We are ready to tie this off. And yes, I use a whip finishing tool. I still have not dedicated the time to figure out how to do this with my fingers, but if that makes me a bad person, well, so be it. So I'm going to put about 3 whip finishes on here. I do not want this to come apart. Well, that worked out nicely now, didn't it? I need stronger thread, apparently. Okay, so now we're ready to see the final product. Here we go. There you go. The Chief. See plenty of movement back here. That marabou really covers up that connection. Looks like a bait fish. Part spinnerbait, part zonker, all fish catching machine. Good luck, guys. Leave a like, leave a comment, and put it in a fish on the water. Thanks for watching, guys, and you can also check out more at showmeflyguy.blogspot.com. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.